Hello, my name is Leonie. Thanks for being here again. If you're new here, welcome. So I've been recently watching Gilmore Girls, and I guess you could call it obsessed. Who knew that the TV show that everyone has been telling me is the perfect comfort autumn show turns out to indeed be the perfect comfort autumn show. In a way, I am glad that I never watched Gilmore Girls when I was still a teenager, because I would have developed an unhealthy obsession with Rory Gilmore. Just like her, I was a little nerdy girl who just studied a lot and really liked reading. The main difference between us being that I did not get a single morsel of attention from all these boys. But Rory Gilmore reads a lot of books during the show, and online you can find a list of all of the books that she reads, so you can see how many of the books that Rory Gilmore reads you have also read. And I thought it would be fun to go through it together and have a little chat about Rory Gilmore's tastes in literature and just see how well read or poorly read I am in comparison to Rory Gilmore. I already know I'm going to be humbled a lot because there's about 300 books on this list. But my main goal, I think, is going to be, are we higher or lower than average? Because on average people check off 50 books, so that's 15% of the books on this list. I will link this list in the description as well, so you can also check it off for yourself. I'm by no means the first person to do a video like this. The first time that I came across it was when Kara's Corner did it, so I will also list her video in the description. Okay, so I have read 1984 classic, and I did really enjoy that book. And also Alice in Wonderland. Okay, we're off to a great start. Huckleberry Finn, Cavalier and Clay, I've genuinely never heard of. Ugh. I did actually at one point start reading the Diary of Anne Frank in the original Dutch language, of course, because I am Dutch. I don't think I ever finished it, and I was like 15 when I started reading it. But I should definitely finish that sometime. The Art of Fiction. Does that mean that Rory writes? I'm only on season 1. I have actually read The Art of War. I don't know if that's a red flag or not. It didn't make a particular impression on me. I'm genuinely seeing a lot of titles that I just do not recognize. Babe. The Undeclared War Against American Women. That's actually nice. I'm only on season 1 right now, but I do really enjoy seeing that Rory is, you know, like a little bit of a feminist, and that apparently she also reads books about it. The Bell Jar, I still really want to read that. Okay, so far we started off with a few, and then now it's just... I haven't read any of these. The Bielski Brothers? I've never heard of these. I think I've read an excerpt of Beowulf in English class, but I don't think that counts. Bitch in Praise of Difficult Women. That actually sounds so interesting. I should keep notes of books that I want to read. I have read Brave New World. It is one of my favorite dystopian classics. It's not a surprise that it's on here. Brigadoon? What is that? I guess I really expected this list to be full of English classics, but I'm seeing a lot of titles that I've never heard of. Maybe they are English classics and I just don't know about them. Carrie is Stephen King, right? I've also never read Stephen King. Candide by Voltaire. Oh, I didn't know that was fiction. It's always really interesting when philosophers write fiction books. Because I know most philosophers from, you know, of course, writing non-fiction about their philosophical ideas. You would expect that they would make them capable of writing very interesting fiction stories with very interesting ideas and themes in them, so maybe I should look into that. Ooh, I have read Catcher in the Rye. It was one of the only books that I had to read for my required reading that I actually enjoyed. I think I speak for a lot of people that the required reading for school was just usually not the most enjoyable, and for me, I remember really wishing that we would read something like Jane Eyre or something by Jane Austen in English class, but we never did, mostly because I'm Dutch, so those books would just simply be too difficult for us to read at that point. So we read little lesser known books that were mostly just really short. They really wanted to give us the short books, and I really didn't enjoy them, but I did enjoy Catcher in the Rye, which I do realize now would be a red flag. I know it's one of the red flag books, But I liked it. I was 16, okay? This random boy that was just swearing all the time and not listening to any grown-ups and calling them phonies really spoke to little teenage me. It's really fun to see that Rory does really enjoy reading, also her required reading that she has to do for school. And she really seems to love like English and English class. I love, by the way, I am madly, deeply and irrevocably in love with Max Medina, Rory's English teacher. I really ship him. I know I'm in the minority when I say I really ship him with Lorelai, but I do understand why people ship Lorelai and Luke. I'm starting to see it, but I'm only on season 1, and so far I'm team Max, but that's just because I am so in love with Max. Charlotte's Web. To be fair, I didn't know that it was a book. I did really enjoy the movie. It made me bawl my eyes out as a kid. More Stephen King, which I haven't even read A Christmas Carol. That's kind of bad. I did read A Clockwork Orange. Why have I only read the Red Flag books on this list? What is going on? It's a good book. It's a good book. Okay. That was 1 out of 9 pages, and so far I've only read 6 books. Oh, we seeing some poetry. William Shakespeare plays. Just more stuff that I haven't read, sorry. Crime and Punishment. Let's just move on. Rory is a Stephen King fan, I am seeing. Who came up with all these books that Rory will be reading in the show? Was there just someone on the set that really, really loved reading and was like, I'm gonna make her read all of these books that I love? Maybe it's a culmination of all of the books that all of the writers enjoyed. The Da Vinci Code, a classic, haven't read it. And then even more books that I just haven't heard of. Oh my gosh. She read the Divine Comedy by Dante. Impressive. Ooh, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is one of those books that I still really want to read. I feel like Gothic literature, Victorian literature, is something that I haven't read anything of, but I probably should because I know it's going to be something I love. And I remember learning about that in English class a very long time ago. I was like, that's so cool. It sounds so dark and interesting. I wish we would read it. But of course we didn't read it because the level of English was too high for us. And then I just never got to it. Maybe if I was just given those books to read, I would have loved them and I would enjoy my required reading a little bit more. The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I've never heard of that, but it sounds very funny. Here, The Complete Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. I also really want to read more. I did read one of his short stories, The Telltale Heart. Eloise, Emily the Strange, Empire Falls, Emma by Jane Austen. I haven't read any Jane Austen yet in my life. Encyclopedia Brown, Ethan Frome. Ethics by Aristotle. Interesting. I've probably read an excerpt from it for one of my philosophy classes, I think. This is truly not going well. Eva Luna, Everything's Illuminated, Extravagance. Fahrenheit 451, I did read that one because I was making my way through all of the classic dystopians, and I will admit, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I wasn't the biggest fan of this one. I thought Fahrenheit 451 was a little bit too much of a surface level analysis of an interesting problem though. Fall of the Athenian Empire. We're seeing some non-fiction. I really like that. Fatland. Fear and Loathing. The Fellowship of the Ring. I also haven't read it. I love the movies. James Joyce. 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Fletch. Flowers for Algernon, Fountainhead, Fortress of Solitude, Frankenstein. I have read Frankenstein. Amazing book. Highly recommend. Just that story about humanity and Freaky Friday. Is that a book? Of course I've seen the movie. I didn't know. Is it based on a book? That's pretty cool actually. Galapagos. Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. Oh, I really want to read that one. That's a big book if I remember. I know Judith Butler, of course, is known for their opinions on gender, of course, and the construct of it, so I really want to read their theories. Well, now here you can see that Gilmore Girls really comes from the 2000s when she's reading a book about Bush. Gidget, Girl Interrupted, The Gnostic Gospels, sheesh, The Godfather, The God of Small Things, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I have in fact read that. when I was a child. Gone with the Wind, The Good Soldier, Letters to Judy, The Graduate, The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Gatsby, the only other book next to The Catcher in the Rye that I really enjoyed of my English required reading. So I have like a fully annotated version of it with all the annotations that our teacher told us to make. And I should really reread it. Hamlet, Harry Potter. I've only read the first one, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The Heartbreaking Word of a Staggering Genius. So far it's looking like we're not even gonna make the average of people who are filling in this list. Heart of Darkness, Helter Skelter, Henry IV, The History and the Decline of the Roman Empire. See, these are all books that I'm like, yeah, I wish I had read those books, but I haven't. I wish I could just take those books and just download them into my brain so I would have the knowledge, but I didn't have to put in all the time that it would take to read these non-fiction books. The Holy Barbarians, House of Sand and Fog, House of the Spirits, How to Breathe Underwater. I've never heard of these. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I've never actually read Dr. Seuss. I'm not sure if they were translated in Dutch. Maybe they weren't. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Howl, The Iliad. Wow. Inherit the Wind, Ironweed, It Takes a Village. Jane Eyre. I'm currently reading Jane Eyre. It's right here. Finally reading it. Like little 16-year-old me who wanted to read Jane Eyre in English class. Almost 10 years later is finally reading this book. So I am gonna tick it off. The Joy Luck Club. Julius Caesar or Kaiser. The Celebrated Jumping Frog. That sounds really fun. That sounds really fun. The Jungle. Just a Couple of Days, The Kitchen Boy, The Kite Runner, Kitchen Confidential, Lady Chatterley's Lover, Gore Vidal, Leaves of Grass, The Legend of Bagger Vance, Less Than Zero, Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. I've heard so many wonderful things about this book. Man, going through this list is just going to make me add so many more books to the list of books that I want to read. Lies and the Lying Liars, Life of Pi, Little Dorrit, The Little Locksmith, The Little Match Girl, Little Women. I haven't read it. I really enjoyed the movie, so maybe I should give the book a try. Living History, Lord of the Flies. I also read that one, and I didn't really enjoy it. The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson is from The Haunting of Hill House, right? Another author that I really want to get into. The Lovely Bones, Love Story, Macbeth, Madame Bovary, The Manticore. What is that cover? The Manticore. The Manticore. The title refers to elements of the subconscious which unfold through the story and are eventually manifested in a fantastical mythical creature. This sounds super cool. I wonder if a lot of these books that she's reading are books that were kind of popular in the 2000s, you know, contemporary fiction from that time, but didn't really stand the test of time in the sense that now, 20 years later, people would still be talking about them. Because I realized that the majority of contemporary fiction or literature, which seems to be Rory's genre of choice, most of the stuff that I read from contemporary fiction is just whatever is published in the past 2 to 3 years, or I reach all the way back to, you know, classics. So I wonder if a lot of books on this list are things that were just really popular new books in that time, but that I now don't know because I was like 4 back then. The Master and Margarita. I like that cover. Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter by Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir is another author that I really want to read. Sherman Meet Talk Pretty One Day. Meaning of Consuelo. Mencken's Chrestomathy, The Merry Wives of Windsor. Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I have read that one. It was pretty interesting. I guess I expected more of the book. I expected it to be a little bit even weirder and even more chaotic, so it stayed a little tame for my tastes. But it was interesting to read. Middlesex, The Miracle Worker, Moby Dick. No. Mojo Collection, Molière, The Monetary History of the United States, Monsieur Proust. Man, if I knew Rory Gilmore, if I watched Gilmore Girls when I was younger, I know that I would have been reading so many books like this and so many classics. Miss Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I did read that. Really enjoyed it. I kind of had a hard time getting into Virginia Woolf. It's not really my thing, but Miss Dalloway, fun read. Very bittersweet read. That is, on the one hand, feels very summery, like a happy sunny day, and then there's just this underlying tone of dread, which is usually the vibe that I enjoy in my fiction anyway. Ernest Hemingway, Month of Sundays, Mutiny on the Bounty. Ooh, a pirate book. I'm always looking for more pirate books. My Life 4, My Life as an Author and Editor, My Life in Orange, Myra Waldo's Travel and Motoring Guide to Europe. Oh right, because Rory of course wants to travel through Europe with her mom, with Lorelei. My Sister's Keeper, The Naked and the Dead, The Name of the Rose, The Namesake, The Nanny Diaries, Nervous System, or Losing My Mind in Literature. That sounds really interesting. Is it about like the influence of reading on the nervous system? I have a master's degree in neurobiology, but of course we never really learned about what reading does to your brain because it doesn't really have anything to do with like medical stuff. That's pretty interesting. I like that. New Poems of Emily Dickinson. Oh, I remember actually there's a scene in which Professor Max Medina there's a scene in which Max Medina explains Emily Dickinson, or like quotes Emily Dickinson to the class, and I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. Maybe I should read poetry. The New Way Things Work. Nickel and Dimed. Night, Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Oh, and then Northanger Abbey Anthology and Theory and Criticism. I see an essay brewing in Rory's mind. Dawn Powell, Notes of a Dirty Old Man. Of Mice and Men. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I actually never read that. I remember Diary of a Wimpy Kid being a thing. Maybe when it got translated, I was already a little bit too old for it. Or I thought it was very heavily marketed towards boys and therefore I never picked it up. But I do remember seeing it in stores in the children's section very often, but I've never read it myself. On the Road, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 100 Years of Solitude. Haven't read it, but I really want to read this because I feel like magical realism and just stories that have this magic undertone running through it. I think I would really enjoy that. The Opposite of Fate, Oracle Night, Margaret Atwood, Oryx and Crake, No, Othello, Our Mutual Friend. Man, please, something that I've read. The Outbreak of the Peloponnesian War. Out of Africa, The Outsiders, Passage to India, lots of travel stuff. Peace of the Nietzscheans and the Sicilian Expedition. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Again, I haven't read it, but I have seen the movie. Peyton Glaze. Oh, The Picture of Dorian Gray. One of my favorite, if not my favorite classic of all time. I just love me a beautiful story about obsession and youth and manipulative friendships. Picks at the Throw. Pinocchio. Please Kill Me. An uncensored oral history of punk. Wow, that's very cool actually. The Polysyllabic Spree. Portable Dorothy Parker. Portable Nietzsche. Price of Loyalty. Price and Prejudice. Haven't read it. Property. Pushkin. Pygmalion. Quattrocento. I really wish I could talk about more of these books, but I can't. I'm so sorry. A Quiet Storm. Rapunzel. Have I read that? I feel like there should probably have been an occasion when I was a child that I read a version of Rapunzel, but I'm not entirely sure. The Raven and Other Poems. I have read The Raven, so I will tick it off. Leading Lolita in Tehran. Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. The Red Tent. Rescuing Petty Hearst. Lord of the Rings. R is for Ricochet, Rita Hayworth. Robert's Rules of Order, Roman Fever, Romeo and Juliet, A Room of One. Oh! I was about to take it off and then I realized that I actually haven't read this yet. But this is one that is extremely high on my priority list. Room with a View, Rosemary's Baby, More on Europe, Sanctuary, Savage Beauty, Daisy Miller, Scarecrow. Oh, sheesh. She's so well read. I could never. The Scarlet Letter. Fun fact, I did actually hold a presentation about the Scarlet Letter again for English class. Why am I talking about my English class so often in this video? I've read English literature outside of my English class. We had to have a presentation about something that had to do with England and I decided to do it about a book. But I didn't read it because that would be too much effort. So I know exactly what happens in The Scarlet Letter. I've just never actually read it. Seabiscuit, The Second Sex. Here, this is another one of those books that I would really want to read, but I know that it's 800 pages of pretty philosophical, term-heavy stuff, because I did read, again, an excerpt of this for my philosophy class, and it was super interesting. If I remember correctly, it was about the ways that women are kept from any kind of rationality or rational conversations, because those are deemed male things or masculine things, and how as a result of that there can be this kind of resentment brewing, but it was mostly about the philosophical concept of phenomenology. So it was very philosophical, super interesting, but also made me think, like, if the whole book is just 800 pages of this, that's gonna take some time to get through. Secret Life of Bees. I've watched Bee Movie. Does that count? The Life of Colette. Selected Hotels of Europe. No, I have in fact not read Selected Hotels of Europe. The Selected Letters of Dawn Powell, Sense and Sensibility, Separate Peace, several biographies of Winston Churchill. Shadow of the Wind. I have not. Shane. Cool title. The Shining. She's a thriller girly. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. S is for Silence. Okay, we're on the second to last page right now. Slaughterhouse-Five. I have read that. A long time ago. It's pretty fun. It's very odd. I didn't expect Slaughterhouse-Five to be so heavy on the, I would call it chaotic sci-fi, almost magical realism-esque psychedelic sci-fi. Very fun. Small Island, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, Snow White and Rose Red. Snow White and Rose Red? Is that what it's called? Social Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy. See, she is reading the interesting nonfiction books. I like that. The Song of Names, Song of Simple Truth, The Song Reader, Songbook, More Sonnets. Sophie's Choice. No. No, I have not read it. I don't know why I thought that I did. The Sound and the Fury, Speak Memory, Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, Story of My Life, Streetcar Named Desire, Stuart Little. Ah, is that also based on a... Is Stuart Little based on a book? That's very cool. Okay. Ernest Hemingway, Swan's Way by Michael Proust. This is the book that Lorelei wanted to read, right? Swimming with Giants, Sybil, A Tale of Two Cities, Tender is the Night, Terms of Endearment, Time and Again, The Time Traveler's Wife, To Have and Have Not, To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel like this is a classic I should have read, but I have not. Richard III, Three Grows in Brooklyn, The Trial, The True and Outstanding Adventures of the Hunt Sisters, Truth and Beauty, Tuesdays with Morrie, Ulysses by James Joyce. No. What will always stick with me when you read Virginia Woolf, in the introduction there are a few parts of Virginia Woolf's journal entries in which she talks about reading Ulysses, because of course they're both stream of consciousness, so Virginia Woolf took a lot of inspiration from Ulysses and James Joyce's writing style, but in her journal she talks about reading Ulysses and hating it. So Virginia Woolf didn't like it, I will not read it. The Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. Uncle Tom's Cabin, Unless, Valley of the Dolls. Oh, we only have one page. This is really bad. Oh, this is really bad. Can we at least get one more book that I have actually read? The Vanishing Newspaper, Vanity Fair, The Velvet Underground, and Nico. The Virgin Suicides. Rory Gilmore really has read all the classic TikTok books. Waiting for Godot, Walden, Bambi? Is that also a book? I didn't know. Wow, so many. I mean, I knew all the Disney fairy tales were of course based on fairy tales, but that so many other movies just turn out to be based on books, that's actually kind of funny. War and Peace? No. We Owe You Nothing, What Color Is Your Parachute, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, When the Emperor Was Divine, Who Moved My Cheese, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Wicked, The Wizard of Oz, Wuthering Heights, The Yearling, and The Year of Magical Thinking. That was it. Wow. I've read 18 books out of the 340 books that Rory Gilmore has read. I did better than 30% of the users on this list, and I did not beat the average score. I guess there was some stupid part of my brain that really thought that because I'm someone who likes to read, I would get at least a little close to the average, but I guess it does make sense because I've simply not read many classics. I haven't read all those classic English children's stories because I am not English. And the majority of the books that I read are either very contemporary books, so books that weren't even out yet when Gilmore Girls was being filmed, and like a lot of fantasy, which she just doesn't read. I would say that now I am super motivated to start reading all these books that Rory Gilmore has read, but to be honest, I think I've made peace with the fact that I just have a different taste in books, and that's totally fine. But there are definitely some books on there that I'm like, oh, I really want to get around to reading those. Also, there really are quite a few classic books that I've read that I would expect would be on this list, but Rory Gilmore did not read during Gilmore Girls. Just basic things like Animal Farm or The Yellow Wallpaper or something by Camus. Let me know how far you guys got. I would genuinely be very interested in seeing how all of you guys are doing and how many books you were able to tick off. This was just fun to kind of look at. I love watching Gilmore Girls. I notice I'm even more invested in Lorelai's storyline than I am in Rory's, maybe because Rory is just very young still in season 1. But I'm so excited. I love watching it. It's just on all the time when I'm doing stuff. If you have like any other ideas for Gilmore Girls related content that I could make, let me know, because I would love to keep feeding this obsession. Again, I really wonder what would have happened if I watched Gilmore Girls when I was in high school, in secondary school, and I just really do wonder if that would have propelled me to start reading a lot of English classics in my free time, and if that would have like really changed the way that I read books and the books that I've read by now. But I guess we'll never know. We'll never know, and that's fine. This was just like a very simple chill video. I hope you had fun hanging out with me for a little bit. So I guess at this point I'm going to say goodbye. Subscribe if you want to see more. You can follow me on Instagram. But after that, I will say goodbye. I hope you have a very wonderful day, and I will see you soon next week with another video. Goodbye.